Several years ago when I was 25, I lived with, at the time, one of my best friends. Our friendship eventually started to go dwindle, as it usually goes when you move in with a good friend, so she was rarely home. This night, however, she ended up staying at our place heading to bed early. At the time I was a server, so I stayed up pretty late, usually watching YouTube or doing something else. This night was no different than any other, except for the fact my neighbors tried to kidnap me, and I'll get to the story now. For some background info, we lived in a 3-bedroom house with 2 bedrooms, and the kitchen facing the crazy neighbors that tried to kidnap me. They were a younger couple living in a smaller house than ours. They were constantly coming to our door asking for handouts. Now normally I'd be happy to help a neighbor out, but they would come over and ask for crazy stuff like for us to fill up an old Mountain Dew bottle with water because theirs got shut off. They've also asked for stuff like beer and one time even $1. They would constantly be knocking at our door to ask for help, and when we wouldn't answer, I'd peek through the window to see them either jacking cigarette butts from the ashtray or even pressing their eyeballs against the door peephole to see if they could spot us. Anyway, one night I was smoking and watching YouTube on my couch when I heard a knock at the door. I rolled my eyes, instantly knowing who came to the door. Mind you, it's 11 p.m. I checked the people, and of course the boyfriend, my neighbor, was standing on my porch. Normally I would just walk away and continue with my life, but he looked like he was in distress. I opened the door to see what's up. He then says, I just wanted to come over here and see if you would help me film my engagement. I got my girlfriend here a ring in my pocket, and I need you to follow me to my backyard and help film it for me. Baffled but curious, I told him congrats and said that I'd be out in a second, I just needed to put shoes on. I shut the door behind me and locked it. Quickly, I ran to the back room that looked out into their backyard. I peeked through the blinds to see the setup. Absolutely nothing. Pitch black darkness. No sign of decorations or anything like that. Naturally, I woke my roommate up and told her what was going on. Yeah, screw that," she said to me, and we both walked back to the door. After the boyfriend started banging on the door, I looked through the peephole again. I couldn't see anything at first, not until the boyfriend pulled his eyeball away from the peephole, which is why I couldn't see through the peephole. I quickly turned around and put my back up against the door. My roommate came running back to the door from her room, holding 2 wire hangers for protection. We both clung onto the hangers and sat up against the door until he finally left. We were so freaked out, but we wanted to make sure we were overreacting. We went out our back door and hopped into her car so we could do a drive-by. They always had their front door open and also didn't have the blinds, so it was easy to see inside their house. We slowly crept by in her car and peered into their living room. Sitting on the couch and all staring at the wall was the couple, but also now they had an older man with them. We sped off into the night and ended up staying at a friend's house that night. I never answered the door for either of them again. One day I came home from work and an older lady was parked in their driveway. She walked up to me as I got out of my car and asked if I knew where the neighbors were. I told her I hadn't seen them for a while, and she informed me that she was the owner of the house. She told me they were months late on rent and finally came to evict them. She entered the home to find it completely trashed, needles and garbage everywhere, holes in the wall, and human waste on the floor. I told her I was sorry to hear that she had to deal with all of that, but I was happy they were finally gone. I'm not 100% sure what was going on that night, but I'm glad I didn't follow him to the backyard. I moved out of state to a very small town. First day moving in, a neighbor walking his dog greets me and introduces himself to me. He gives me a quick rundown that the neighborhood is filled with tweakers and other shady types. I took that as a general warning, that may be all I'll have to deal with. A few months later, he invited me over to his place to teach me how to do some woodwork. As we're making a shelf for my cat to sit on, he's asking me questions. To me, they were normal everyday questions, but looking back, I realize now he was trying to get some information out of me. He asked me questions such as, why did you move here from out of state? Who lives with you? Do you have any other family members in the state or area? Once we were done, we went to install the shelf, and he met my mom who stays with me. He talks to her for a bit, and then we left to walk back to his place. He went on to tell me that he can see our yard from his place and notices that I barely go outside with my dogs. He told me not to worry, that if someone breaks into our place, that he can see them and shoot them from his room. That's what I'm thinking. How is that possible? Because you live over half a block away. Before I can question him, he asks if I want to see more of the town. I agree to that. He walks to his car and pulls something out from the middle compartment, and then he tells me to get into his pickup truck. I get into his truck as he's filling the gas tank up with gasoline. Once he's done, he walks to the driver's side and opens the door and drops a holster between us. He tells me not to worry about it as I examine it, trying to see if it is a gun or not. As we're driving, I realized he hasn't said a word for 5 minutes, and this guy loves to hear his own voice, so that was not normal. Another thing I noticed is that we're on a dirt road and haven't seen a single house, trailer, or vehicle for a little while. I guess I gave off some nervous vibes because he suddenly goes, "So yeah, unless you know where you're going out here, you will get lost, and it's best to have a pickup or ATV to drive out here." After about another 10 minutes of silent driving, we get to a little creek. Luckily there was another truck there. All he says is, "Oh, look at that, someone else is here with us," and he grabs the holster and gets out. We both see a lady with a big dog playing in the water. She turns to us as she sees him walking closer to her. She gestures to his holster, and he tells her not to worry, that it's for the snakes. She lifts her shirt above her waist to show her gun, and she tells him she's not worried one bit. They talk for a few minutes, and she tells him that her husband is home waiting for her to make dinner, and she's just out letting the dog have some playtime. The neighbor changes his tone and posture from confident to defensive now. She called her dog and they went to their truck. He's watching her, and she hasn't started her truck yet. A few minutes pass, and he tells me I guess it's time we go too. When we get to his truck, she drives off herself. The drive back, I start to get uneasy and creeped out. Why would he drive me all the way out here and just leave? Why tell me not to worry about the holstered gun, but tell the lady what it's for? Finally, I get out of my head and just break the silence and give him my life story as to why I moved. Finally, he responds that he can relate to my story and gives me the rundown of how the town is and what it's about, and that some people are more racist than others and I should watch my back for that. Once we get back to his place, I tell him I have stuff to take care of at home and nope the hell out of there. I said to myself, if I'm ever going to hang out with him again, I won't be alone by myself. Now, for a little context, we have a really bad situation with our neighbors. Not bad towards us, but they are drug dealers. They could be worse, but I only knew about the drugs because the house owner's little sister, who was in high school with me, told me. She was removed from their custody, and they actually got the SWAT team called on them last year. I have met the owner's girlfriend/wife. I'm not sure what she was to him, but I know she had 2 young kids, probably 7 when I met them. I have no idea what happened to them. But now that I said the context, I will get into the story. I was at home during winter break from college. My mom and I found out really late that the Netflix show Lucifer just aired its final season. We loved the show and watched it together. My dad was at work, and he usually works from 5 p.m. to 4 a.m. My mom and I decided to binge watch the second half of the season this night. We meant to watch like 2 episodes, but we all know that you never really stop at 2. Anyways, so we're up at 2 a.m. in the morning watching one of the last episodes. Throughout the night until this point, starting at I believe 8 p.m., we heard our neighbors yelling outside. I told my mom to ignore it because it's none of our business. It continued on and off for the rest of the night until around 1:30 a.m. when we hear them arguing on our porch. My mom and I just looked at each other because why would they bring their argument onto our porch? Like, there's a fence between us, so that means they had to purposely go around the fence to get to our porch. They argue for another 30 minutes, then everything goes quiet. We figured they'd left, only for someone to start kicking at our door and trying the handle. Luckily the door was locked, but my mom and I were not sitting on the couch anymore. My mom tossed me her phone and told me to call 911 while she made sure our side door was locked. We only have a front and side door. I called 911, telling the operator someone's trying to get in. My mom starts talking to the operator, explaining what's going on. Now I must mention, I have a bad habit of not having my phone on me around my parents. I'm a total bookworm, and I have been since I was a kid. Phones would always distract me from reading or drawing, as I'm an art student as well. Because of that, my phone is usually in my room charging most of the time. So I asked my mom if I need to call my dad. She nods her head, and now I go upstairs to get my phone. I am scared to turn on the lights, so I crawl upstairs in the dark to get my phone. I call my dad and try to look outside from my windows. I couldn't see anything, but I explained the situation to my dad. He's rightfully freaked out and says he'll come home. My dad works 20 minutes away, but I was still scared of the situation. A lot of events can happen in 20 minutes. I stupidly hang up on my dad in a panic and go downstairs to my mom's room. The person is now at the front door kicking more aggressively as my mom and I hide in her room. I call my dad again, telling him I don't want to die and begging him to be on the phone with me. He agrees as we hear the banging stop. The operator says police will be over in a few minutes, and my mom looks out the window. I yelled at her, explaining that if the person was trying to get in and saw that, they'd know where we were in the house. As I'm explaining this to my mom, we get confirmation that the police are there. I tell my dad, and the operator confirms they found someone at our door and it was safe to come outside. My mom goes outside. I peek my head outside and see the neighbor's girlfriend/wife talking to the police. She explained that she needed help and that is why she attempted to break in. I'm not sure if I believe that. Why would she try both doorknobs? Regardless, the police ended up taking her down to the station and my dad stayed home that weekend. If she really needed help, I hope the police gave her the help. But quite frankly, I'd never want to see her again.